I'm going to start here on the Refugee Education Special Interest Group page, which is where the ARRID, more of the background information about ARRID is held, including the process of how it was developed. But very importantly, for those wanting to use it, and this video that's on the web page is what we're going to replace now. So what this website does is has the database categories, so how you can filter the database. And this was really set up really drawing on the work of Alistair Ager and Strang and their understanding, their integration conceptual framework. So you'll see on this left-hand side here is basically their, the UK Home Office integration framework that we used. And then on the right-hand side are additional categories that were added as we started to go through the process of coding all of the literature and seeing what this literature really is talking about. All of the round circles are the largest categories of the ARRID database, but within each of those categories, there's subcategories. So if you want to know what the categories are about, or you've got an area of research that you're interested in and you want to see maybe how you would use the database, if you scroll down on the page, it's got a description of the categories and subcategories. So for example, under marker and means, there is work. And in that, we've also got 3 subcategories: employment, voluntary work, and refugee businesses and entrepreneurship. The subcategories are all nested within the larger category. So if you just looked at work, you would get everything under the subcategories. But if you really are interested in entrepreneurship and refugees in Australia, you could just search for this subcategory and you would be able to find it. So health and social care has quite a lot of subcategories, everything from sort of primary health, mental health and well-being, sexual and reproductive health, etc. So hopefully this will give you a sort of a guide, and I think the social connections one's probably and social bridges and social links will probably be one that if you're working on more social, questions of families or transnationalism, you'll find them in these sorts of social bonds or social bridges or social links categories. All right, so going now to the database, which you can access through this page. It's at the bottom or at the side, but I've already opened the tab, so I'm just going to go there. And this is what the ARRID dashboard now looks like, the new and improved ARRID dashboard. I'm going to you can zoom in to make it a bit larger. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it's a bit easier to see, hopefully. Hopefully you have a big screen because there's a lot going on this page, but let me work through what the dashboard does. I guess, as I said, this is about trying to filter through we've got 2,593 titles you can see here in this database. And I think I've said it already, but this is both academic research, but also grey literature. So it does have research reports that have been produced by NGOs, community organisations in Australia as well. And it also has, which I think is really fantastic, it has PhD theses and master's theses where they're accessible. So it also gives us a bit of a sense of who the upcoming scholars are in this area. So one way that you can search the database is just using the free text function in the top here. So for example, if I searched for yoga, this would search the titles because the title here is highlighted. So we search here the titles, and here we go. There is one item in the database which is called Yoga Therapy and the Health of Refugees. So highly relevant, but it's only searched the titles if you do that. You can search for authors. There's always a number of ways you can do this, but sorry, let's just move. To keep clearing filters. It's really gone slow. Okay, so we could search authors here. So I could search my own name and you will get all of the research that has been tagged with my name here. I wouldn't search subcategories because there's easier ways to search subcategories, and it's not that there's that many subcategories, but a really good tool is to search abstracts. So, for example, if I am interested in the settlement of Bhutanese in Australia, I could search Bhutan and I will get, it will have searched all of the abstracts, and this is the 25 titles here that have got Bhutan in the abstract. This is kind of interesting in some ways also. One of the things at the bottom here that this graph does is sort of gives you a sense of when the literature has been published, but also what sort of subcategories have been tagged with this literature. So unsurprisingly, Asia and the Pacific is the subcategory that this literature, these 25 titles, is most frequently tagged against. Then you've got links with mainstream institutions, mental health and wellbeing, for example. So there's sort of interesting things if you've got very specific questions that searching for a particular, if you have a particular filter on and you've got a list of titles there that you can sort of see what kinds of themes are associated with that literature. Okay, so that is the free text search function in this database. Whenever you're doing anything, it's really good to, and then you're trying to do a new search, it's always a good idea to clear the filters because the filters will stay there until you clear them. And sometimes you can forget what you've clicked on because you can actually click on anything. So for example, alcohol and other drugs, and you've got that literature, which is tagged with Bhutan. You've also got a tag with alcohol and other drugs. So to make sure that you haven't got any tags on, just clear the filters. You can also just click on what you've already clicked on and it will highlight that filter. So there's quite a lot of functionality there, maybe too much. If you're overwhelmed by this, you might need to practice a little bit, which is why we're doing this, this type of seminar. So the other ways that you can search, sorry, go onto my notes. Subcategories. Okay, so there is also on this front page ways that you can look just for subcategories. So these are not the major categories that I showed you, the round ones, but the drilled down categories. So for example, if you were interested in literature that is associated with COVID-19, you could just click on COVID-19 in the subcategories, and you would get here all of the 38 titles that have been published, which has been tagged with COVID-19 relevant to refugees in Australia. So that's the subcategories one there. And then you have the author function here. So if you're really just wanting to know what someone has written, and I was going to check the participant list to see who was here and whether anyone would be, but let's just have a look at someone who's associated with the Melbourne Social Equity Institute. So let's have a look at Karen Block. If you, Karen, so K Block here. If we click on Karen's name, you will also get all of her titles there. So I just wanted to flag though with the authors, this is a database that has some human, I say errors, but ways that it might not capture everyone. So for example, you've got block AA here and block A. This might be the same person. It's just that because in some publication they've used a middle name as well, then, it's not the fail-proof way of finding what an author has written, but hopefully it's close enough. So also if a full stop was used after their name, then as you can see here, there's 2 billet S, but one of them's got a dot and one of them doesn't have a dot. So it's likely to be the same person, but just they've come up twice then in the author filter. Okay, I'm going to reset the filters and let's have a look at what else happens on this page. The 2 graphs at the bottom are, useful in some ways and perhaps not useful. It's really a frequency count. So it just shows you the number of items under different categories by year. So all of the colors are different categories and the years are obviously stacked. It does look like there's been an explosion of research in the last, well, we really only looked in the last 20 years. I'm not sure why we have 1995 anyway, because it was meant to be just a 20-year scan, but it's possibly the way that also the database searches of library search engines pulled up data as well. But if anything is missing from the database, we really encourage contributions to make sure that it is as comprehensive as possible. And I'll talk about that at the end. The count of subtitles here is, because we have no filters on here, it is the count of subtitles for the whole database. So you'll see, 602 of the database have been tagged with links with mainstream institutions. So that's where research has been looking at how, health services, how schools, how any of universities are accessible to refugees. So that's significant. And we've also written a paper about that if you're interested to sort of understand what we drew from that kind of quantitative data that comes from this. Came from this database. Okay, but if you do click on any of the, so if you do click on any subcategory, it should also give you I thought it would, but it won't. Okay, that's all right. I'll show you another way. On the left-hand side, and this is another way to filter things, is the same sorts of information that you have, but they have the larger category groups. So for example, if you're interested very broadly in the question of work, instead of having to select the 3 subcategories, you can just select work here. And that will just give you literature that has been tagged under any of the subcategories and with the broad category of work. You can also, when you click on the subcategories, it will give you the subcategories just for that particular category. So, as I said, there's employment, refugee businesses, volunteer, and then there's just the broad category of work. So again, if you just wanted the refugee businesses and entrepreneurship, you would select the subcategory then, and you've got a smaller list of 10 titles that are linked to that topic. As I said, it does also filter all the authors, so you can also see who are the key authors that are interested in that topic as well, which is, I think, useful as well for trying to, if you're not working in an academic space, but you're interested to understand what academics you may wish to reach out to about their expertise, this author list can give you a sense of who has been working in this space. You can, all right, I'm just going to leave it there for this front page, but just to say, if you've got a list here and then you think, I'd like to know more about this, what is this refugee employment support, the HRMS-CSR nexus, means nothing to me. If you right click, there's an option to drill through to show the abstract. So if you go through, you can see then the abstract for that particular title, and it has the full APA reference for it. there's another that's a little bit onerous as a way to see the full titles, the full abstracts. So there are, let me just go back. So that was just looking at the titles and then right clicking through. You can only select one at a time to scroll through to the maybe, yeah, or maybe not. Let me just see. No, yeah, you can only do one at a time to get the abstract. But another way to get the full bibliographic details is to go to the second screen. So this is the front page of ARRID. There are three pages in total, and they sort of do slightly different things. This second page is the one that gives you the full bibliographic and abstracts for the whole thing. So I'm clearing the filters now, and we have, again, the 2,593 titles. And we've got, this is the full database. So it's got the title, it's got the full APA reference, and it's got your abstracts. But it doesn't have quite as many search functionalities. So you couldn't really search by author unless you do a free text search. But you can use these left-hand side filters. So let me just see if we wanted to do, let me just see. Yeah, let's do, I feel like we've done work a bit, but if you wanted to look at housing, you've got the large category of housing there, and then you can look at the smaller categories as well. So housing, homelessness, public and social housing. So 6 titles specifically on public and social housing and refugees. And you've got the information here. In terms of extracting the data, this is something that the old database did this a little bit more intuitively. I think you could make a CSV file, but it's a matter of just selecting you can select multiple rows, right click, copy selection, and then you paste it into Excel. So it should, there you go, come up with the title, abstract, and the full reference. You can do that on any page, and any part of the database is just to copy and paste. It does allow you to extract tables, but you know, there's 2 ways to do it, but I think I found that just selecting the rows that you want and then copying and pasting them into Excel works pretty well. So that's the second page, the full abstract page. And now the third page, which is really where you're trying to look at co-occurrences of categories. So it looks very much like the first page, but it has this additional functionality here, which is the count of titles with coinciding subcategories. So that was where I was hoping to get to last time, but I realized it's on this third screen. So for example, this is where if you're interested in, let's just say you're interested in the experiences of LGBTQI+ refugees in Australia, you could go to the subcategory sexual orientation and gender identity and click on that, and it would tell you, I'm hoping, when it gets to it, yes, it tells you what the coinciding subcategories are with this subcategory. So you can see that the literature, there's 27 titles here. The most common subcategory that coincides with that is visa and immigration related issues. So we can see that the literature that's most prolific in this particular, with this population group, has been around the way that the legal system has, and the refugee law has dealt with the protection needs of people who are LGBTQI+. I think that was just about all I had. Oh, yes, the very important thing. So the big question, which some of you may have, is, but how do I then access this research? And I think this was some of the things that we realized as an open source database that has been really set up through love and a lot of hard work, that it wasn't within our capacity to include links to literature, especially as there's firewalls and logging in is very difficult. So it doesn't give you direct access, but in many cases there are the DOI links. And what we do hope, or what we envisioned, is that for people working outside the academy, knowing that this literature is here, hopefully is a way to one step closer to being able to reach out to someone maybe who can get access to them through a university. I know I certainly help any colleagues I can in my NGO world to access academic literature. So if the question is, how do you then access that literature? It is a matter of then going to a library database, or to, in the case of grey literature, going to the organisations that have produced it. As someone who works for the Refugee Council, I know how much websites change. So putting links to the grey literature was also seen as not a particularly feasible strategy, because they so quickly become outdated. So to make it more accessible, it's about providing the detail, as much bibliographic detail for people then to follow up. Just to go back in terms of updating the database, like, we understand that there's going to be things missing here, and maybe there's also because the tagging of the literature really came from reading the abstracts, not from reading the full reports, which is just, again, was the practicality of it. So there may be categories that literature may fit in that haven't been tagged with that category, and we really welcome input from anyone who's an author or somebody who thinks that this literature should be tagged in a different way in the database. On the ARRID, the Refugee Education Special Interest Group page, there is a link at the top here, this orange box, to add changes to ARRID. So if you link on that, it provides an opportunity for people to add or suggest changes to any of the literature. And I guess it's only going to be as good as the people who use it and the people who contribute to it. But we really hope that it is a database that can be, that can at least unlock a little bit of this literature for those who are going to find it most useful. Because I think, as I said at the very start, there's just a wealth of knowledge in Australia, and there's, one of my pet peeves is when people come and say, I'm going to do some research on this. The Refugee Council help us to, and you think, there's so much literature. Have you looked at this literature first before proposing this? How are you adding to this literature, or adding to the gaps, not just, and how thorough has the search been about what already exists and how we use that more strategically?